Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Loyalty Summit live stream special event. My name is Rick Ferguson with Loyalty Summit, and I'm very excited to have with me the co-chair of our upcoming Loyalty Summit CXM conference in Copenhagen. Welcome, Charlie Hills. Thanks for joining us, Charlie.
Thank you for having me. Delighted to be here.
And for those of you who may not be familiar with Loyalty Summit events, we have an upcoming Loyalty Summit retail conference in Copenhagen on 17-18 April of this year. Charlie is one of our co-chairs along with Ian Pringle. If you are a retail loyalty leader, please join us at the conference for a day and a half of deep dive workshops, compelling panel discussions, lots of best practices and loyalty goodness just waiting for you there. So please join us. And if you are a provider who is interested in sponsoring an event like this, please reach out to me and I'll be happy to have a chat with you. And in the meantime, I'd like to welcome Charlie again to the stage. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Charlie, and Mando Connect?
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. My name's Charlie Hills. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Mando Connect. We're a loyalty specialist partnerships and rewards agency, part of WPP, founded back in 2017. And we're probably most famous for our love of insight and then turning that into actionable insight for our clients and the brands and programs that we work on. So delighted to be here. Delighted to be able to talk about the research. Delighted to be able to talk about the conference.
Absolutely. And I know we were talking offline about some of the research that you guys do at Mando Connect. I had seen you talk about some of that at Zurich last year. Can you tell us a little bit more about the European market research that you guys do and how valuable that is for loyalty leaders in the continent?
Absolutely. I think one of the founding tenets of us as an agency was that we wanted to learn and then we wanted to apply that insight for our client work and the partnerships that we developed. So back in 2018, we formed an IP partnership with YouGov, who are a sort of global research and insight provider, as well as the extensive resources that we have within WPP. And we started a white paper series called What the British Want from Loyalty Programs. And in that, we looked at membership, appeal, impact, and really sort of understanding those big nationwide insights that mean that everybody that works in loyalty could do better and optimize their programs. And hopefully that has become a sort of a Bible within the British market, particularly for understanding how to evolve and optimize your program. And within that data set, we can look at segments, we can look at specific customer groups, we can look at loyalty program leads. So it's a really robust foundation for us to build our strategies on and then our action plans, and then make sure we keep learning. But we never sit still at Mando Connect. We're always looking up and looking outwards. And when I started to think more about European loyalty, I think one of the gaps that we noticed in the market was that benchmarking. Actually, there is a hypothesis that Europe was a very diverse loyalty market, that we were seeing huge variations across markets. But what we were seeing was that all the research and insight was very market specific or brand specific or customer specific. There wasn't anybody taking a view. So we went to see our friends at YouGov, we went to see our friends at the Loyalty Summit, and actually last year in 2023, we published the first European report looking at loyalty membership, loyalty appeal, and loyalty impact across 24 European markets. Since then, we've added to that research. We've gone down deep dives with market experts. We've done big interviews with program leads. We've done podcasts on the format, most recently on the Belgian market, actually adding a sort of snapshot into the 2023 paper. And in Zurich, we will be launching the 2024 edition of the research. And I can't tell you what's in it, but there are some huge insights and some huge new news, to the point that the community of experts we brought together have been having several big debate calls about what's happening in Europe and why they think it's happening and why we're seeing such different things in each of the markets. It's fascinating. And we look at obviously the market level data, and then we look at really good case studies as well. And I think that's been one of my favorite things, to look at what other programs and other markets are up to and see which bits we can borrow.
That's so exciting. So you heard it here first, folks. We'll be able to take a look at the new Mando Connect research in Copenhagen. So that gives you yet another reason to join us. And I know that was one of our discussion points, Charlie, about the power inherent in the diverse markets of Europe. And maybe since we've brought up the research and the upcoming news you guys will be able to share, why don't we talk about that a little bit in terms of just at a high level, what sorts of opportunities and challenges do loyalty marketers in Europe face because of the diversity of the markets, and how best might they be able to leverage those opportunities and do it in a way to build sustainable relationships with their best customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fascinating question, and I wish there was a single answer. And I think the only answer that there can be is that anybody who's looking at running a program across multiple markets, or even in one of the markets, you need to start with your brand and your audience and actually understand who they are and what they need. And I'm sure there will be huge variations within markets by segment, by demographics, by psychographics, but there's, you know, even bigger variations when you start to think across different markets, because then you're looking at different loyalty structures in the market, different retail structures in the market, different language requirements across the markets. Many of our European markets, you know, have not one, not two, but, you know, 3+ languages within a single market. And all the subtleties and cultural variations that come with that are really, really important that you build that into your strategic process up front. We try and bring that to life in the research as well by interviewing program leads who take different models. In the 2023 paper, we looked at Marriott Bonvoy, who have a single global model that they then tailor to each of the individual markets through communications and optimize it for that market. We also looked at Samsung Rewards, who actually have a single promise but is activated very differently in each of the markets by the local team. So there's lots of different structures and lots of different ways of doing that. But I think the commonality is first start with your brand and start with that understanding of your audience and design for them, design bespoke, don't go off the shelf, particularly in the European market when we have such huge variation within countries as well as across them.
Yeah, so the point that stood out for me in your answer was the brand promise may stay the same as in Samsung, but the expression of that promise is going to be different and localized based on the ethnicity of the audience, the language, the culture. All those things have to come into play, but that essential brand promise stays the same. Is that what I hear you saying?
I think that is one way of doing it. That's certainly the way a number of big brands do it. But I think it's important to think about that promise in its broadest sense. It's not just the name of the program, the proposition of the program. It's the mechanic of the program, the rewards and benefits that you offer, how you talk about it, and how the operations and back end of your program work as well. I think all of those things need to be varied by market and varied by approach and varied by customer in order to really work and really deliver true meaningful loyalty to your audience. I think the days of the one-size-fits-all approach are long gone.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. And the theme of the conference, and I think this all ties together, and you and Ian Pringle and I had spent some time talking about this. You know, we like to have a big overarching theme for the event, a concept to kind of hang the discussion around. And we talked about the theme of intelligent loyalty. And it's easy to just kind of toss off a phrase like that. But I think as we talked about it amongst the three of us, we had, you know, a very specific promise inherent in that message. And the way you articulated the challenges of implementing loyalty across diverse markets, you know, you talked about an intelligent approach to that. And certainly, I think that'll be an overarching topic of conversation at the conference is how can we approach this discipline of loyalty marketing in an intelligent way. So maybe talk a little bit about what the phrase intelligent loyalty means to you specifically, Charlie, and what types of conversations you hope we'll be able to have when we get together in Copenhagen.
Yeah, I think it's been a big trend that we've seen coming through in the last sort of 2 to 3 years. There seems to be a real move to loyalty marketing getting smarter. You know, I haven't seen a program launch in the last sort of 3 years that's been that generic one size fits all. Let's just bang out a points program and reward transaction. I think brands are baking their DNA into their programs. They're recognizing they need to deliver their brand promise in their experience of the program. They're baking their DNA and actually driving home their brand message within the program. And I think that's such an important thing to consider, you know, when you are developing a program or optimizing an existing one, or, you know, revolutionizing an old one. It's actually what's unique about you, what's unique about your relationship with your customers, and how can you build loyalty that lasts. And in order to do that, we are seeing programs in every area get smarter. We're seeing a lot of new development in how do I unlock insights about my audience. You know, loyalty programs are so critical for acquiring zero-party data data and first-party data. That was one of the big themes of the conference last year. It'll be a big theme of the conference this year. How do you actually unlock those insights? How do you personalize? How do you use research? How do you use gamification to understand more about what your customers want? I think there's some really interesting moves in that space so we can learn more. But I think what's moving on is perhaps sort of 3-4 years ago, people were just getting overwhelmed by big data. They were getting big dashboards that didn't really mean anything to them and going, oh, I've got lots of data, but I don't really know what to do with it. But what we're seeing now in Loyalty is a real application of smart initiatives that are insight-led. And I think that's what intelligent loyalty means to me. It's actionable insight. It's I've investigated something, I've learned this, and I've done this differently as a consequence of it. And then I've looked at what's happened and I've innovated again. And some of those are big changes and some of those are little changes. But I think that will be one of the big themes of the conference this year. You know, what have you done based on that insight? What are you going to learn? And what do your plans look like for the future?
Yes, and you had mentioned the idea of intelligent insight coming from data, and you and I have been in the business for a few years, and it's always seemed to me, as a journalist and someone who covers the space, that we've been talking for at least a decade, if not longer, about the power inherent in customer data and how we're going to be able to unlock that and deliver hyper personalized and super relevant offers and rewards to our customers. And it's a concept that it's kind of like fusion reactors, right? They always seem to be just around the corner. We're always almost ready to unlock the power of the data. And if I understand you correctly, based on what you just said, you're starting to see some actual applications in the wild where retailers really are taking some of the data and using that to deliver measurable impact, back to their organization. So you're starting to see some of that right now, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, I think Loyalty is getting better at unlocking that insight and then acting on it in various ways, actually, that add value beyond perhaps where people were thinking sort of 10 years ago. So I think probably 10 years ago, we were just trying to find out as much as we could about everybody, but not necessarily thinking about how we would use that data. And I think there are some very simple things that programs could do. I'm very passionate, as you know, about brand partnerships and, working with other people to achieve more, but spend less, to me has always been a very intuitive way to approach loyalty. And it can be as simple as, what is it that my members love doing on a Saturday afternoon, if that's an important point for you to connect, and actually using research to understand what they do on a Saturday afternoon and the brands that they do it with. That's a very simple piece of research to do. That's a very simple piece of insight to acquire. But then actually what you can do is you can then work with those brands to create a really brilliant partner reward that you don't have to spend as much on, the partner invests in as well, and you can give something really valuable back to your membership, which then drives your own metrics around appeal, engagement, NPS, however you particularly track it for your program. So I think there are some very simple executions, and then at the other end there are some very complex executions using AI and machine learning to understand and predict consumer behaviors, next best action, personalization at scale. We're going to cover a lot of that in the technology tracks at the conference as well. But I think that can be scary. I think people can do very, very simple things now, but that actually can make a really big difference. If you look at what member pricing has done in the British market, for example, just based on that insight of who's doing this elsewhere in the world and where is it working and how can we apply that to our market. I think that's a really interesting application of what can you give a consumer in a cost of living crisis. Actually what they really need is value. Let's develop member pricing. It was hugely positive initially, and now we are starting to see some backlash. There is a big CMA investigation going on in that space, so there's a lot of change. But again, it's just that, what do I need to know and how do I apply it and what do I change in my program as a consequence of it, that I think is so critical.
Absolutely, and obviously, as an American, it's been interesting to watch over the past few years the impact of data privacy regulations on what we're trying to do. Right, in the U.S., it's been kind of a free-for-all. We're starting to see some regulations come into play, but Europe has been dealing with pretty stringent data privacy regulations for quite some time now, and it almost seems to me as an observer that we've seen things come full circle, where for a while marketers were relying a lot on programmatic advertising type initiatives and third-party data that they were able to purchase or scrape from the internet. And now, because of the regulations, we've come full circle back to the power of data, specifically as it relates to loyalty, because it is zero-party data and it is first-party data, and it's data that ostensibly customers have given the brand permission to collect and use, right? So it's kind of a transparent interaction. And I'm curious if you perceive things as an insider the same way. Have we seen things come full circle? And in a way, have the data privacy regulations actually enhanced the power of loyalty data to help build those strong customer relationships?
I think they very much have. I think the move was the right thing to do, but I actually think the consequences of it for how we've behaved as an industry and the ways we've had to think about data have actually moved us on a lot quicker than we would have done without that regulation. One of my favorite things I'm seeing at the moment is, programs thinking about how can I acquire the data I need in interesting ways. It's really important that you take a composite approach. It's really important that you have research. It's really important that you have tracking. It's really important that you have qual. It's really important you have social listening, that you're talking to the people in the customer call centers, that the people who are on the front line of your loyalty program have feedback loops in so that we can all be growing. But it's been really interesting to me to see how programs are using little quizzes and little games to understand what people want and asking them very outright, do you want rewards that look like this? Do you want partnerships with this kind of brand? And actually consumers are having the opportunity to say yes or no, and then we're able to act on that. So I think it's more genuine. I think it's better. And I think it's really moved us on, and we should probably all be quite grateful for it. But it was very scary at the beginning, I think, as we learned, as with all changes.
Yeah, I'm certain it was, and we're starting to see a little bit of that in the U.S. now, of course, with the state of California leading the way. But it will be interesting to see if marketers here on this side of the pond are able to learn from some of the best practices that you guys have developed. So we'll be paying attention to that.
And
For
we're always
sure.
paying attention to looking to what, is happening in your market as well. I think it's so important. Our conference is about Europe, but it's important that we look globally as well. There are some such interesting things happening in markets, and that inspiration and that opportunity to question is invaluable. And then, bring it back to your market, or even look sector to sector. I think it's been fascinating when you look at what's happening in restaurants and coffee shops. They almost picked the best of travel programs and the best of retail programs. They've added in a bit of, payment friction, solution management, and then actually somehow they've come up with something brand new, in their sector. So I think that's a really interesting thing for us to explore as well.
Absolutely. We'll definitely be doing that, and we'll certainly have those conversations in Copenhagen. You had mentioned technology, Charlie, and obviously there's been a lot of hype around AI. There's been a lot of hype around Web 3.0 and NFTs, and lots of exciting new ways for marketers to try to leverage technology to build relationships with their customers. And from the European perspective, you had mentioned lots of really interesting use cases around data. In terms of some of these new technologies, AI, Web 3.0, are we starting to see some of that hype translate into actual initiatives that are making a difference with customers? What's your observations there?
I think we're seeing lots of tests and lots of experiments and lots of stunts and lots of development behind the scenes. We haven't yet seen huge applications, but I think 2024 will be the year for it. So I'm looking forward to the conference and seeing what the suppliers are actually going to come and show us as live case studies, because there are some huge activations happening this year, some big things happening in the world, and we know that a lot of the programs have really invested to make those kind of key moments. So I think there's more to come, but I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, we'll definitely be watching it. I mean, I've seen, obviously, there's been some news made. I think Visa announced a big AI initiative, or a big Web 3.0 initiative. So we're starting to see some brands spend some money on this technology. It'll be interesting to see how that translates into actual results. And it'll be great to see if we have some good case studies revealed in Copenhagen.
And I've seen the agenda. I know we will.
Yes, I'm very excited. So we have just a few minutes left, Charlie. We want to keep these relatively short so folks can get on with their day. But I did want to talk about partnerships, because you had mentioned that that's a passion of yours. And, I've been around long enough to have worked for some of the really large companies about 10 years ago that became kind of global players behind the power of those multi-merchant coalition programs. that we saw then. And then, of course, those companies and most of those programs kind of imploded, and some of them are still with us and some of them aren't. But those programs were built around the need for data sharing, and the whole concept of the coalition program worked because brands were able to gain access, even if not directly, even if only indirectly, to purchase data from other sectors, behavioral data, other ways for them to try to get a handle on what their customers were really expecting from them and getting a fuller customer view. Obviously, those coalition programs are mostly gone, but we are starting to see brands come together again, this time without, kind of a third party operator, and build those partnerships and leverage some of those learnings from each other in a way that still respects the regulations and the data privacy. So can you talk a little bit about what excites you about loyalty partnerships and what we might be able to expect talking about in Copenhagen and over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the track that I'm most excited about at the conference, actually. It's the last track. So we've got the grand sort of closing of the conference. And I think when I started in loyalty marketing, partnerships meant one thing, and it meant big coalition, exactly as you said. And I think what has changed exponentially in the last 25 years is that programs are thinking much smarter about partnerships. So we did a recent piece and we've identified 8 key uses for partnerships in loyalty, and coalition is one of them, but probably not the most prevalent anymore as it was. So we're seeing partner rewards, we're seeing promotional partnerships, corporate social responsibility partnerships, sponsorship partnerships, acquisition partnerships, where programs are working with other programs to bring members in, innovation partnerships, where actually they're trying to develop new products together or new services together. So I think that the breadth and depth of brand partnerships in loyalty is the most interesting thing. And actually, I feel that we're at the beginning of it. And I think we're going to show some really good examples in Copenhagen of the different types of things you can do. And now feels like the moment, because what people want, what customers want, what members want from partnerships is variety, topicality, treats, different types of experiences from programs that are relevant to that kind of brand DNA. But what programs want from partnerships is assets and resources and the ability to do more but spend less. So I think there's a real kind of moment now, actually, where those two things are coming together. Consumers want partnerships and programs need partnerships. So I'm really excited to see what will happen. I think actually the opportunity in that sector is probably even greater than in technology over the next sort of 1 to 3 years. Slightly controversial point of view at the conference, and I look forward to debating that. But I think that's a huge growth area for us. And we've seen that across all the conferences, across all the industry events. It's not just us talking about partnerships. Everyone is talking about it, but it means so much more than coalition now.
Yes, and we will have some friendly debates there. It's one of the things we enjoy most about Loyalty Summit conferences. So we've given you what I hope is a good overview of the conversations we'll be having there, and we're very pleased to be able to welcome someone with as much experience and a stronger point of view as you, Charlie. So thank you again for
thank
joining
you for having
us
me.
and for co-chairing our conference. Again, Loyalty Summit CXM Europe will happen in Copenhagen. It will happen on 17th to 18th April. You can learn all about it at loyaltysummitcxm.com. You can register. Registration is open now. If you're interested in sponsoring, please let us know. Charlie will be there. I'll be there. And we will look forward to seeing you there as well. So thank you again, Charlie. I really appreciate you taking the time today. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you in person again in Copenhagen.
Thank you, and likewise.
Thanks, everybody.